Hi guys, and welcome back to Nail on Sunday podcast with me, Chris, my beautiful wife, who has
Not washed her hair, no. I haven't.
I'm not going to say wash your hair. You look like a lady who's going to a business meeting. Are you having a business meeting today, honey?
No, I'm not. I have jeans on the bottom.
Oh, but nobody knows that.
No, nobody knows that you have shorts on the bottom either.
I'll show the pod. Oh, boys and girls, watch us. Yeah, boy. Boys back in shorts and t-shirt and no jacket today because, well, let me put this back in. Because it is currently 13 degrees and sunny outside here in
It's gonna be
Scotland.
16 degrees today in the beginning of March.
That feels epic.
Crazy.
Epic. I've actually got hay fever, that's why I'm now rubbing my eyes. Sorry. Hi, honey. What have you been up to? Do you know what? I'll ask you in a second what you've been up to. In fact, it's International Women's Day today. So
They'll hear this in about 4 weeks' time, but yeah.
They will. I just want to extend my appreciation for you and for all of our listeners because, well, you get the occasional guy who listens to this, but for the majority, most people are women. So I just want to extend my day. Extend my welcoming
Gratitude. Admiration.
I just want to extend my admiration for each and every one of you. I personally don't think women need a day to celebrate them. I think they need just to be celebrated every day. And that's just me. So, honey, what have you been up to this week? Excellent, moving on. I'll tell you what I've been up to. Do you know what? I think this week feels like a whole month has been in this week.
There's been a lot, yeah.
I'll tell you something right now.
Been busy.
I know I've asked you, but since you're thinking about it just now, I have shuffled Warehouse 6 like a maniac. Up, down, left, right, because we had, 6 pallets done up this week of gel polish, of builder gels, of hard gels, of cuticle oils, of just everything.
I know, and there's so much more to come. Like, we need
Did you see you have 73 boxes
88.
coming? 88 boxes coming.
It's actually more than that.
Stuff.
That's one order, 88 boxes. Like 88 big cardboard boxes, like 90 centimetres.
Yeah, so
square.
For the most part, there's usually 6 or 8 of these boxes on a pallet. In the context, that's at least 10 to 12 pallets coming. I have no space for that 10 to 12 pallets. We do need a bigger warehouse or another warehouse or a satellite warehouse or something. We've not discussed it in depth yet. And by the time this podcast comes out, it'll probably just be kind of kicking
We better have it by then.
Yeah, I was talking to Alan across the way. Actually, I just want to say something, right? Alan across the way, never going to listen to this podcast, so I can say whatever I think about him. He's a great guy. He's a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Guy's currently get cancer. He goes through chemo every 2 weeks. He comes into work the following day, if he can, and that's only because he has to drive himself from Ayrshire, down South Ayrshire, not down South Ayrshire, but down to the south of Ayrshire, which must be at least 25 miles away.
Which is like 45 minutes.
Yeah, because it's back roads, a lot of it, and stuff like that. So if he can't manage to drive himself, as in he feels unwell to drive himself, he takes that day off. Last week he drove in, the day after chemo, he couldn't get comfy in the seat in the office, so he had to do some work in his car.
I know it's working from his car sometimes.
And it's because the sun beats in his car, because it's across the street from us. And I just want to say something, like that, to me, is an absolute baller. I reckon he must be early 60s.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. And what annoys me ever so slightly is, just in general, I've seen this across every industry, staff take time off for the
most nonsensical reasons.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of absence in nail order, and it is one thing that Chris and I, as employers, we are very, very relaxed, and we're way too relaxed, and we're really casual. But there are 2 things that we cannot abide, and it's about attendance. It is staff constantly being late. Everybody's late from time to time, right? But staff constantly being late, and sick days. It's just like an unwritten rule for us that obviously when people are sick, sometimes people are actually sick and they need to be off. But there is a lot of times that there are unnecessary sick days. And we have had a lot of them recently. And when you put that into context, that Alan can turn up to work after chemotherapy at his age. Guys,
Andy was in hospital last year for like months because he did his shoulder in. And when they did his shoulder in, they went in and they found a blood clot in his knee. Weird. And they had to operate on it. It was a ton of fate that these things happened. I think because of all those things and because he was off last year, he feels obliged to come to work for those employers.
He's not self-employed. Just to put this into context, he is not self-employed.
He's employed. And that puts just a welcome note into today's pod. Today we're going to, you've seen the thumbnail if you're watching on YouTube, you've seen the description if you're listening on audio format. We're going to be talking about being employed versus self-employed versus side hustle. Now, Alan is employed. He turns up to work. He could probably just get a sick line.
He could, yeah, no,
the fact he's getting chemotherapy, that would probably warrant a sick line, but he turns up. So good on him. Not so good on the rest of you, but that's another thing for another day. Honey, how have you been this week and what have you been up to?
I don't really know what I've been up to. This week has been such a blur. I feel like every week right now is just passing by like that. We've got so much newness coming. I say this every single episode. It's just like actually getting there. We're doing a launch tomorrow. By the time you've heard this will have been out. We're doing our new spring colours, new spring scents, new colour in Duragel, colouring book.
Sun gel.
That's not tomorrow.
I never said it was. Just in general.
Just coming up. Synergel. Yeah, but whether or not that we've released it by the time this goes out,
they'll know what
Synergel is.
Like you said, extension stuff coming, but it's not like we've forgotten about extension stuff. That's probably
there's just so many projects in the pipeline.
The one thing I would say is, I would say January and February, as much as I tried to hype up January to be a big month, January was a good month. It was all right for us.
Yeah.
February, a bit wishy-washy. March started off absolutely banging. Springtime, I feel like everything just gets going. What's the problem we've got in the next 5-week block, honey?
Easter? Oh, well, no. Well, you and I going places and doing things.
We're going to country to country.
In London.
If we seen you there, then yeehaw.
Yeah, so we're going down to the London country to country. We like country music. We went to the one in Glasgow last year, and quite honestly, it was shite. Well, it wasn't shite, right? The music was great, but the actual experience, when we saw on the news or the One Show or whatever the heck it was, just in passing, because we never even watched these programs. I don't know how we saw it, but we saw the London one, and it was like a proper festival, and it looks cool, and there's stalls and cowboy boots, and you can get little tattoos and all sorts of things, like a proper festival. Whereas the Glasgow one was just not like that. So we're going down to the London one this next weekend. Then the weekend after that, we have to go to Italy for work.
Have to go to Italy for work. Jeez, we have to get some extra sunshine, ice cold beer, and some pasta.
Then 3 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that is Easter.
Yep. Then Easter sale, so that's wild.
Easter sale.
That's like non-stop.
Then the week after that, we go on our very first holiday in a year.
Yeah. It's not even the week after that, honey. It's days after Easter holiday. Easter.
Yeah.
And Rebecca was doing the rota, and she's like, how many people do you want in on the Monday, the Tuesday? And I'm like, 50. We need 50 because I know in my heart of hearts, I need to wrap up the Easter sale, as in you guys get everything sent out to you by the Tuesday, because I'm going to need the Wednesday to prepare Warehouse 5, take everything from 6 and put it into 5 that's needing restocked. Because after that, we're out of here for 2 weeks.
I know.
What were we thinking?
I know. We've done this before.
Hmm?
I don't know. I don't know what we're thinking.
And where are we going?
Stagecoach Festival.
Yeah, more country.
More country. We are going to be countryed out of our faces. We are going to be done with country music, I think, after this.
Yep.
We will have seen anybody who is worth seeing in the country game.
And we got into country music a couple of years ago because we ended up going to Nashville to run away from our friends.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our friends live in Ohio. They had 4 kids under 4 at the time, and we went to visit for 6 weeks, and we got very, it's hard, 4 kids under 4, no, under 5. And Rebecca was like, let's just go away for a week. And I'm like, sure. We just drove south and we went to Nashville. And I remember, I don't know if you guys have been to Nashville. If you've not, if you ever think about going to Nashville, even if you don't like country music, Nashville is one of these places. I remember walking down the street from the
down
hotel.
down that hill.
Yeah, by what's it called? Oh God,
by the assembly rooms.
Yeah, by the assembly, across the street from the assembly rooms. And as you walk down the hill, you hear music getting louder and louder.
It's just noise.
You're like, what is this? And then you turn on to Broadway, and dear God, music, people, songs, dance,
I've never
laughter,
seen anything like it.
Drink. It's just people there's bands in every single window. It's
every window.
Just unreal.
Of every bar in every single building on the whole street is a bar.
And some are louder than the next ones. You have rooftop bars, you have street venue bars. It's just. And the thing is, what is it? 3 blocks realistically?
Broadway.
Maybe?
Yeah.
They call it Upper Broadway, Lower Broadway. Basically, Lower Broadway is 3 blocks, but there's so many people within that.
Maybe not even 3 blocks, maybe 2.
It is. If you can book flights.
But honestly, Nashville is fantastic. We went with absolutely no expectations. We went into country music at the time, particularly. And now we've been, 3 or 4 times? 4 times? We love it. We love it. So I would highly, highly recommend it.
Okay. So really that's just a rundown of what's going on in our life.
So much, which is why we are trying to record loads of podcasts right now so that we don't let you guys down when we do actually have to be away some weekends and we can.
That's why we're time travelling.
Yes.
Here's a question. I'm just going to put it out there. We're travelling with Lucy, the stagecoach, Lucy Pastorelli. Should we just take a mic and just get her to talk into it for an hour after she's drunk? That would be a podcast in itself.
It sure would.
Okay, Annie. I alluded to it in the beginning. We're going to be talking about the difference between being employed as an LTEC, being self-employed as an LTEC, and we're going to get on to side hustles at the very end. And we're going to talk about pros, cons, and differences between them all.
Yep.
I think the easiest one probably to start with is employment.
Yeah, I would say
that's pretty cut and straight. You have been an employer for, you've owned a salon for over a decade. You understand the employment part of it and everything that goes on along with that. You've kind of been self-employed a little bit with your brows. After?
I was. It's not kind of. Yeah, it was.
I would say towards the end it was more of a side hustle. As in,
it was actually, yeah.
So
yeah.
You've been through it all. Celebrating you day to day.
Oh, wow. Thank you. It's not even my birthday.
If it was your birthday, I'd probably forget.
He would. He actually would.
Okay, so let's start with employment. I think employment is very stable, very secure. Let's talk about some of the benefits of being employed.
At first, I want to say, I think employment within the nail industry or beauty industry in general is dying.
It's changed a lot since
COVID. So much. Like when we first had the salon, being self-employed was not a common thing. And it was, if somebody was self-employed, it was something they did after being many years of being employed. And it was just like the next natural step for them to, more often than not, open their own salon. This whole boom of studio spaces or shared self-employed spaces is just so new. Like you said, post-COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, benefits to being employed. There's quite a few benefits to being employed. I would say that, arguably there's more benefits to being employed than there is to being self-employed.
Technically, yes.
There's no actual benefit.
The funny thing is, when I was writing this down, I actually wrote my own notes this week for a change because we came in here to record another pod and then we decided to change it at the last minute. So for me, there was much more to write for being employed. Let's talk about the fact that we all go to work for is money. So wages.
Guaranteed income.
This is really dependent upon contracts and 0 hour contracts and all the rest of that stuff you get.
Well, 0 hour contracts are now being scrapped, which they should absolutely be. We've never worked on 0 hour contracts.
Do you think they should be scrapped completely?
Yes.
In every sector?
Give me an example of, I'm one of these people that can be persuaded either way. I try, especially in my older age, not to be pig-headed with a view. So give me an example of a sector that you think that they might work well in.
I think with it...
0 hours.
Yeah. It's stupid. So maybe if you're listening in the US, you don't know what we're talking about here. Or maybe that's a thing in the US, no?
No, I think it is. I think it is, yeah.
So basically you're given a contract where they don't have an obligation to give you any shifts.
So they give you a job, but you're not guaranteed any amount of hours.
Yeah.
So you might do no hours in a week or a month.
I remember being employed, but on a self-employed basis. It's one of the hardest. It's such a tax thing.
Who's that for?
Can't go into it for legal matters.
Oh, legal.
In case the dude's listening and sues me. And basically, you're employed by them. You have to go out and make your own money to give a profit share to them. It's such a weird thing.
Sounds illegal.
Probably in a way it was.
Probably
to
was.
a certain extent. Yeah, it was back when I was a kid.
I don't think it is fair. I think that if you're offering somebody a job, you should be able to offer them at least one shift, one guaranteed shift a week, because that allows them to plan their life as well. That allows them to get other jobs. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I just don't think it is fair, a 0 hours contract. The reason that employers try to do it is they try to get out of having to pay people on quieter times and holiday pay and things like that as well. So
yeah. So I genuinely think that holiday pay should be given as an average. For example, sick pay we can talk about as an average. So I don't think that benefit of a 0 hour contract would be good. So let's talk about nail techs being employed. What would you say would be the average working week for a nail tech?
In terms of hours?
Hours or days?
God, I mean, these days it really, really...
I would say when we first
Nobody
opened the
works
salon,
full-time anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody.
When we first opened the salon, it was very, very structured where the salon would probably be closed on a Monday. Very first opened. Tuesday, Wednesday, it was skeletal staff because you would only have a few
So you'd maybe have
appointments.
like 2 people.
Thursday.
Late night.
So
it was a split day.
Friday, again, later night, but Friday would be busy just in general. Saturday, half day, not a full day shift, sorry. Sunday, half day shift. If we were doing Sundays, you would normally do a Sunday.
It was usually only me that does a Sunday.
Yeah.
God, I think, again, it's changed so much. I think when we first started employing people, it's hard to remember, but were people like mostly on like 5 days? They were either part-time or full-time.
Yeah.
Whereas these days, everybody works in between, don't they?
Yeah.
Like nobody works. If anybody does work full-time, they work full-time on a condensed week. So like a less number of days. Nobody works like 5 days a week anymore, for the most part.
Can imagine Laura sitting and listening to this podcast, freaking out and be like, I work 9 days a week.
Laura is on a really specific package. It's called Infinity. Package. Yep. You've got to be very special to get onto the Infinity package. So yeah, I think, as I said, these days I don't think it's very common to work 5 days a week, full-time hours. People will either condense it or work more part-time and then maybe have a side hustle as well, no matter where they work. I think also from an employer's point of view, I think maybe that we can talk about things from an employer's point of view as well. Just in case anybody is having thoughts of opening their own salon or employing staff, etc., etc.
Or if you want to see it from your employer's point of view and maybe hear it from a different perspective.
Yeah. It took us a couple of years to realise this, but in fact, it took us a few years. But it became clear to us that having lots more part-time staff was far better for us as a business than having fewer full-time staff. Because as soon as somebody went on holiday, as soon as someone went off sick, as soon as somebody went on maternity leave, you were absolutely screwed.
Imagine you have an okay salon, you have 4 members of staff, and those staff are working 5 days a week. And you take one of those people out of the equation.
Yep.
Your 25% quarter is gone. Now, that is a devastation to a salon. You've got to try and scramble to get shifts and stuff because the other girls might not be able to fill in because they want their 2 days off a week and stuff like that, you know?
Whereas if you have more part-time staff, you can maybe ask someone if they want to pick up one day and then somebody else picks up one day. Like the load can be shared out. And we found that for us, it works a lot better. Even in nail order, we find that it works a lot better. Most of our staff have other jobs most of our staff are self-employed nail technicians as well. Or out with nail order. Or like Anna, she's a self-employed waxing specialist. So yeah, most people do have a side hustle as well. So it works well for both of us. But we certainly guarantee hours.
Other than you and I, it's only you and I actually who've been consistently we're in 7 days. But it's Laura will work 4 days.
Laura comes in 4 days.
4 days, but
Laura's obviously
package, so
Laura's on Infinity. So she does work every day
at home.
For the most part. But it might just be some hours here, some hours there, just, Yeah. But yeah.
And we found that this seems to work better for us. However, as nail order grows rapidly, some members of staff are very invaluable. Wish that they didn't have kids and could work more. You know who you are. I'm not going to say any names. So,
yes.
One of the other benefits of employment, all to do with pay, like you touched on there, is sickness and holidays and stuff like that.
Holiday pay.
Holiday pay. So here in the UK, you get, is it 5.65?
5.6 weeks or 28 days. 28 days would be if you were working full time.
Yeah.
So if you were working 5 days a week, you would get 28 days of holiday, but it's pro rata. So if you only worked 2.5 days a week, you would get 14 days of holiday, etc. So 5.6 weeks.
So that's the way it works over the space of the year. And everyone in the US has just had a kitten because, for the most part, you're getting 2 weeks paid vacation?
I don't even know. I think you've got to even build up to that. But yeah, that is statutory in the UK. So no matter what your business is, that is the very minimum that you must give, and that is full pay. So that is obviously very valuable. I mean, 5.6 weeks is more than a month's wage. So you do need to factor that in as well. And we talked about this when we talked about our pricing podcast. That is something that you must factor in when you are self-employed. An extra pound, whatever it is, per client, something like that, to ensure that you are covering yourself for your holiday.
We've got more on that pricing calculator coming very soon to a very special thing.
Do we? Okay, good. I
can see you're so happy about it. We've been working
it's very good.
We've been working in the background for something. Anyway.
So sick pay, if you work for a company, you are going to be entitled to sick pay. Obviously, at the moment, it is dependent on how long you're sick for, etc., etc. Now, granted, sick pay is not a huge amount of money. It's £123 a week, something like that. It is not going to keep you going, but it is something, and it's something that you won't get if you're self-employed.
Yes, that's very true.
I mean, I don't know if there's any way of like applying to the government if there is, right?
Yes.
But you're not going to do it if you're off for a week.
No. The hoops you'd have to jump through being self-employed, but we're talking about that in a minute. So currently, as it stands, for the first 3 days that you're sick in the UK, you have to self-certify, is that right?
Well, they're called waiting days, so you don't get paid for them.
So you do not get paid for them from your employer.
Correct.
And basically, it is, I think, slightly to protect the employer, so that if somebody's got a Super Bowl hangover, they decide to not come in on the Monday, the employer has no obligation to pay them.
I think it protects the employer and the employee. And I think the rules that have been proposed to change from some point next year, probably towards the end of next year, I don't know if any of you know about this employment bill, is going to be very detrimental to both businesses and employees.
Employees more so.
Yeah, because what they're talking about doing is paying people from day one for sick pay. Now, like Chris just said, sometimes people will be off sick because it's a hangover. Sometimes people will be off sick because they just can't be bothered. And if employees are doing that and businesses, and this affects specifically small businesses,
yeah,
it won't affect bigger businesses so much, but small businesses, this is where they'll be affected. Small businesses cannot afford to pay staff for being off one day every month because they have a hangover or they can't be bothered. Or so what you'll have is employers who can't afford for somebody to be off a day every month or 2 days every month or whatever it is because they have a hangover or they just can't be bothered or
hay fever's bothering them.
You know, just anything silly that doesn't actually warrant a day off. What's going to happen up until the point before these new rules come into place? People are just going to start sacking people for their attendance. Yeah. Whereas prior to that, people can go, employers like ourselves could go, do you know what? I don't think that they were really being honest about why they wanted a day off, but it's one day and yes, it has a knock-on effect and it isn't good and we don't like it, but we're not having to pay them for them being silly and being off. If you're having to do that all the time and you're noticing a pattern,
and you have to pay them for it,
businesses are just going to start sacking people.
Again, let's go back to that salon that's got 4 members of staff.
Yep.
And one of those members of staff doesn't turn up on a busy Saturday. You, as an employer, have got to scramble to be able to spread the customers over the rest of the employees.
Yep.
While you're doing that, you might have to call customers and stuff like that and say, like, we can't take you. You have to turn customers away. You might lose that customer.
Yep.
All while you have to pay someone who was out on the Friday night and they've got a hangover.
Yeah. So let's take that employee, right? Let's take that employee who every Saturday after payday, that's what I was going to say. Every Saturday after payday, they phone in sick. And you know it's because on the Friday night, they've been out on the lash. You've seen some of their stories, right? And before, as an employer, sometimes you were willing to let it go. Okay, if it was happening every single month like that and you'd seen stuff in stories, you wouldn't be letting it go, right? But let's just say for whatever reason...
Let's just say, like, it's a birthday and St. Patrick's Day.
Okay, let's just say you've been letting things go. As soon as you have to start paying people for that first day when you know it's an absolute nonsense, that's self-inflicted. A hangover is not a reason that you should be off work. You did that to yourself. You should have planned better and you shouldn't have gone out and got drunk the night before. I can hand on heart say that I have never done that. It's just not right. When we worked at Phones for You, how we would go out 7 days a week. We would be hanging out of our arse every single day.
Yep.
But we knew it was our own fault and we knew we were going to do it again the same night, but we would just do it and we would go to work because we had to.
We'd feel terrible until midday. We'd perk up.
Yep.
We would sell as many phones as we could to hit target.
We would go and go to that good food shop, get a panini, get a cheese and onion roll, get a Starbucks, make ourselves feel better. Yeah, we were a lot younger, so it was a lot easier to do. But we would, like you said, you'd perk up, you'd feel better, and you'd go out that night and do it again. But the whole point is that if employers are having to pay people from day one, all of a sudden they're going, no, I'm not doing that because why should we have to pay people for things that are a nonsense?
Also, one thing I just want to point out, like in 2025, the basic wage in the UK is jumping.
Again, and it jumped a lot last year as well.
From 5 years ago to now, it's jumped up almost £5 per hour, which is wild.
Really crazy. The minimum wage has doubled since we started employing people.
The thing is, minimum wage is a minimum that you have to pay people.
Well, now it's called the national living wage.
Right, okay. So we, as employers, currently pay people more than that, just off our own, off our own back. But it's jumped up so much But it makes me think to myself, like, we'd struggle to pay people like a bigger percentage over that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what that's going to look like to employees is you don't value them. It's not that you don't value them. It's just as a business, you struggle. You've got budgets to conform to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that kicks in, and then you potentially have this sickness thing,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to look at the weak people in that team and think to yourself, right, they've attendance has been terrible and they don't really work that hard when they're in here. I'm having to pay them more and then potentially having to pay them on sick days. That wipes that person out. So what you're going to find is the employment, as much as this is there to empower people like we're doing today, empowering women, it's just going to...
It's going to be negative. Both.
It's going to be negative. People don't see the bigger picture, and that's the problem. The government, as it stands right now, I'm not going to get into politics, but the government, as it stands right now, are very much for the working people. And the problem is,
but they're not even. If they could actually just see the
working people,
and they're not. Yeah, they're not. They are.
They're privileged people.
They're privileged people, and if they could see the bigger picture and actually just talk to businesses, especially small businesses, and let's be honest, the country is run on small businesses.
Yes,
the country is not run on big businesses. You know, big businesses, they tax evade. They don't employ the majority of people. Like, they really need to be.
Again, if you're listening in the US, the UK is not a tax efficient country for big companies to come establish themselves. We do have big companies here, but most of them moved to Ireland because it became tax efficient. In the US, Isle of Man. In the US, you have massive corporations, everything from Walmart to Nvidia to Tesla to Ford to everything. I can't think of any one big company here in the UK.
Oh,
the BBC.
You've got Google as Ireland,
yeah.
Starbucks,
Facebook,
Ireland, everybody.
The BBC here, and that's what.
So who runs the UK financially? Small businesses. So I actually talk to small businesses and see what would help them. So yeah, we've really got off topic here, but I
think it's very on topic.
Honestly, I'm. It's so ridiculous, and please do not misconstrue what we are saying here. We are not talking about people who are genuinely off sick. What we are talking about right now is these one-day occurrences that are very, very frequent for most employers, and they have been for us recently. It's not a problem that we used to have, but certainly the last sort of year to 2 years.
The more people you employ, the more times you see this.
But even as a percentage, it doesn't even equate. We had years go by where we didn't have people off sick. But yeah, sick days have become a real big problem, and for the most part, it's these 1 day.
I think you guys must know. You know the type of person who just phones in sick because they just don't. I used to work with guys like this, and you just know. Or the ones that would be like, "Oh, I'm on death's door," and you're like, "I don't care. It's a busy day." As I've been a manager for a long time. And you would say to them, "I don't care. You guys have to go in. Oh, I'm in death's door. Like I've been up all night being sick."
Oh, that's the one. To me, that's a red flag. When I hear that, I've been up all night being sick. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure it is actually true sometimes because we have all been there. But I'm like,
But here's the thing for me, right? I remember.
Send me a picture from the toilet.
Yeah, when Millen was a kid and he used to come home with that norovirus from nursery felt like every 2 weeks, but it was probably like every 6 months. You would genuinely be up all night. So by the time 9 a.m. arrived, you've nothing left in your system. You're tired, but you can still go to work. See, when you say that,
I feel like that's quite a lot to ask of someone.
Yeah, and I've said that to people, and they've been like, "I still can." And then 2 days later, they come in and they're peachy fine. And you think to yourself, "Come on."
I can remember one time when I had been out the night before. It was one of those things, and that wasn't the problem. The problem was that on my way home, I discovered that I had been mugged, I guess, essentially. So my purse had been stolen. And because the first thing I always do when I got in a taxi is I look through my bag, make sure I get my purse, I get my money ready and stuff. It wasn't a long taxi journey. It was maybe 2 miles, something like that. And it was in the middle of the night, and the taxi driver threw me out, which I think is absolutely appalling. I was a 19-year-old girl at the time. Threw me out middle of the night, made me walk because I didn't have any means of payment. And this was way before, Apple Pay and whatever. So you had your purse to pay or you had nothing. Anyway, so I was up until 5 a.m, like cancelling cards and all that type of stuff. And I said, and my manager at the time, he knew that I'd been out. But I'd explained, like, no, I have actually been up like later trying to cancel cards, blah, 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 blah. And he came and picked me up and said, you're working.
I think he was pissed off because you were with me.
I think he was too.
So one thing we talked about there is how big corporations can shift their premises to manage taxes. One thing about being employed is your taxes are done for you.
Yes.
You're very hands off.
Yes.
In the UK, you have payroll, PAYE, pay as you earn. Every time you earn, a section of that goes to the government. The way I always work out in my head is it's about 27% of your wage if you're on the lower end of tax, which most people are in the UK. 27% of that is split between national insurance, which goes towards things like pensions and stuff like that, and then taxes, which
And this is after your
threshold.
allowance.
So in the UK right now, it's about 12,570 something
So
like that.
£12,570. Yeah, that's your allowance that you can make every year without paying tax. And I think generally as an employee, you have a lot more rights. As soon as you become self-employed or a business owner, you pretty much lose most of your rights. You have a lot more rights, you have a lot more protections, and you have a lot more guarantees. So I think when it comes down to being like employed versus self-employed, it very much depends on the person that you are. Are you someone who likes to go home and likes to switch off after 9 to 5?
This is my next one. You're jumping ahead, honey. You do this quite often. This is because she's had a protein shake, guys. Sponsored by My Protein should be. The next one was 9 to 5. So let's just talk about 9 to 5 since you're rabbiting away.
Yeah. So if you are someone who likes to shut off, like I said, as soon as you finished work, you don't want to have to be doing anything outside of work, then being employed is very much for you.
Ball hooky.
You're except for people who...
You're talking rubbish?
How's that?
Honey, when I used to sell beds, when I used to sell phones, I would be in first in the morning, last out at night.
But you won't do anything at home.
I would go home and I'd like call some of the guys and I'd be like, what happened today, bro? Come on.
You wouldn't.
Honey, I would. I remember getting a phone call when I was on holiday, like with my kids, you know what I mean? And the guy sent me a message, he's like, can you call? Because I don't know if I'm allowed to call like international and everything else. And it was to sort a customer's bed.
Well, just to make it clear, we are very much specifically talking...
There are industries where
anybody on the Infinity package, this does not apply to you.
Affinity package,
yeah. Infinity package, it doesn't apply to you. But this is very much specifically talking as an employed nail technician. The likelihood is 99% of the time when you go home, there is nothing that you are expected or required to do out with working hours. You turn up, you do the clients that have been booked in for you.
Yes.
And you go home. That's it. Which leads you on to?
Bookings, ordering, stock, etc. So yeah, a lot of these things are done for you. I think, for instance, in the salon, when we first started, you did most of like booking customers in and stuff like that, preparing the diary. You definitely did all the ordering. You hardly ever gave that up, even towards the end. At some point, we did get a receptionist, and they did a lot of the bookings for us. But for the most part, as a nail tech, granted, maybe if someone calls up during the day and says, can I book in for something?
Well, we've got an online booking system as well, which obviously took a huge amount of workload off.
Yeah. But for the most part, again, you go home 9 to 5. You're not sitting like trying to get those bookings to fill up those days.
Everything is done for you. You know, and you don't have that anxiety of, oh my God, I have one appointment first thing in the morning and I have an appointment last thing at night and I have nothing during the middle of the day. What am I going to do? When you're the employee, essentially, it's like, well, that's not my problem.
You walk in and plan your lunch.
Yeah, so you'll maybe have some other tasks that you'll have to do, maybe some cleaning tasks and stuff during those times, but it's not a financial concern to you. So yeah, there is that. That is definitely another benefit. It's a lot more relaxed way of working. Being employed, everything's kind of done for you. You just have to turn up and do the job.
What would you say any of the negatives are, just off the top of your head?
I would say the only real negative is your cap on earnings.
Oh, that's a good one.
There is only a certain number of hours in the week. There's only going to be a certain number of hours that you're employed to do, or a certain number of hours that the salon is open. So there is only a certain amount of money that you can make. Now, arguably, you probably make more in tips if you are employed.
Yes.
Because it's all to do with the psyche. The customer sees you and realizes that you're employed, feels like you're probably making less money and gives a tip based on that. Whereas when you are employed, the customer sees you getting that full amount. They don't see your costs, your overheads. They don't see anything. They just see 40 quid. That's going straight in her pocket. So then they don't give you a tip. So, I mean, there is that. You'll probably earn a bit more in tips, but not guaranteed. So we should never rely on tips, and we should never budget including tips, because it's not good money, really. It's just a little bonus. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest drawback, is your cap on earnings. In terms of holidays and when you can take time off, that is a positive and a negative, I would say, on both.
Yeah.
Because whilst, we'll get onto this, people go, you can take any time off you want when you're self-employed. You're far, far more reluctant to do so.
Not restricted, more reluctant. Yeah. That's a good one.
When you're employed, you have allowance available to you that you are entitled to use up. I would say there's probably very few self-employed people that actually take 5.6 weeks of holiday.
100%.
So yeah, it's a negative and a positive, I would say. Yes, you might be restricted with the times it's available because your employer can dictate to you when those holidays are or aren't to be taken. Obviously, if there's other staff members, you might need to sort of work around them in terms of maybe two people can't be off at the same time, or two particular people, or if in departments, etc. Maybe your employer will say, oh, if such and such, the people that have children, they'll give them like preference over the holiday periods, which I always think is kind of fair.
Definitely, because
if
you don't have kids,
exactly,
you're cheaper going away in May.
Why would you want to be off?
Yeah.
So I always think that's fair. So yeah.
One other thing I would say is the working environment. That's the only thing you can really get a bit aggy, I think. You might not like the people you work with. You might not like the clients you're forced to see.
You have no choice over that. So yeah, I guess that can be a negative, but it can also very much be a positive. It just depends where it lands. And you're not obliged to stay somewhere that you're not enjoying working. You could move on and find another environment that you very much like. And similarly, somebody else might step into your old shoes and really enjoy that environment.
Yeah, that's a great positive.
So just because it doesn't work for you doesn't mean it won't work for somebody else, and so on.
Excellent. Self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like you said, self-employed has really had a boom.
It has.
And to clarify what self-employed is, it means that you work for yourself. You, from start to finish, you do your ordering, you do your booking customers in, you do pay your taxes, you denote your hours, and it is your job. That is your job.
Something I will say that I noticed towards the end of us having the salon is when this sort of self-employment boom came around. And I think that some of our employees were very, very naive to the difficulties of being self-employed.
Yes.
Now they're several years down the line, they will have forgotten probably how hard it was to start off with. But I think for a lot of people, they saw the money coming in. Like sometimes they would take the payments and they would be like, well, I've just sat with that person for 45 minutes and I've taken 25, 30 pounds it was at the time maybe. Why am I not getting that money? Not thinking about all the massive overheads we had, especially as a salon owner with multiple staff. Your overheads are, I mean, I guess it's swings and roundabouts, isn't it? But
I would say money is a big driver for people who are self-employed. So one thing I would say about money is when you're self-employed, money is exponential. Would that be fair?
In what way?
You can earn as much as you want based on how hard you work and how frequently you work.
You can, and there's a lot of elements to that. But I think it is really important if you're considering being self-employed that you should not go into this blind, and you really need to understand that it is a lot more costly, in terms of time as well as money, than you think it's going to be. It's a lot more stressful. And there is no guarantee, and you are going to have quiet times. So let's just, for example, let's pluck December out of the air, right? An employed nail technician is getting extra hours, so they'll have a bigger wage at the end of December, as will our self-employed nail tech. That's our busiest time. Everybody's walking away with a bit more money. Yes, self-employed nail technicians will be walking away with more than the employed ones, for sure. But come January...
Arguably even February.
Yeah, to be honest, actually, let's just say you were offered no extra wages and extra shifts. Hours in December as an employed nail technician. I don't know why that would be the case. It would be silly as a salon owner not to offer them out and extend your opening hours, but hey, let's say you weren't. But in January, you could make the exact same amount of money as you can in December. Now take your self-employed nail technician who in January might have 5 customers come through the door and make no money. So then it's an average of the two. So really, who's winning? But yeah, money is a driver for most people when it comes to being self-employed, but you must go into it with an open mind and understand that you have far bigger obligations, letting people down. So like we talked about earlier, being off sick and stuff like that, cancelling on your clients, whereas previously that reflected on the salon, didn't reflect on you. That now reflects on you. And if you do that over and over again, even just a couple of times, you will lose customers. Yeah. People will lose faith in you. So if you are that type of person who's a little bit flaky, it's not for you because your customers will bugger off.
Nice. That was a great point, and that's exactly what it is. I've done this before where I've went to a barber shop who I've been going to for, say, a year, and they're just not open.
Mm.
Why? Go somewhere else, and you're like, actually, I prefer this haircut.
Yeah.
And
So
that's what customers will do.
they will.
Customers are flakier than you.
Yeah.
They will move on quicker than your ex-boyfriend.
If you are self-employed in any industry, the very worst thing that you can do for your business is to be unreliable.
Consistency is key.
Yeah. Somebody told me something yesterday about somebody that's a nail technician, self-employed, and I was like, that just makes people not want to work with you. And I'm sure your customers feel exactly the same.
Yeah, customers can see through it because they're paying for your service.
Yep.
They want the best.
Yep.
All the time.
And that is sometimes going to mean turning up when you don't feel your best, turning up when you really, really don't want to, and putting a smile on your face and just powering through. But if you want your business to succeed, that's just what you have to do, and that's a sacrifice that has to be made. And it's all about sacrifices. When you're self-employed, there is a lot more sacrifice.
Everyone says, I just want to move on for the work-life balance.
There's no work-life balance. Again, right?
It's a tip and seesaw.
If you are wanting to be self-employed for a work-life balance, do not do it, because you will be working far more. Okay, you might go, oh, do you know what? I'm going to go down to 3 days instead of 5. That I was working 5 days in a salon, but I'll go down to 3. I'll be able to make the same amount of money. If you think you're only going to be working those 3 days that you're doing clients, you are sorely mistaken. Your time, you'll be working more than the 5 days. I can almost guarantee.
And this is the thing. A lot of people go into it for the work-life balance. The work part is the driver that gets you there. The happiness is to be the outcome, of the balance part, the family part, the being able to go on holiday when you want part. But when you go into it, your perspective changes a lot. You understand that I have to work all of December. I have to.
Yeah, there's no on fun days off the Christmas market. So I'm going to go over to Germany for a few days for Christmas markets.
Yeah,
no. If you want to have a successful business and maximize your earnings, especially to tide you over the quieter months at the beginning of the year, then no, you're not going to be doing those things.
Mother's Day, Easter, any of these big bank holidays, St. Patrick's Day, when you think you can get the time off, you can't, because everyone else is. You have to suck it up, and you're the person who's there doing treatments. It's like people who work in bars, restaurants and stuff like that. They don't get time off when it's busy, and that's a sacrifice you have to make.
The only reason that you should go into self-employment is to be the master of your own success.
Yes.
That is the only reason. You shouldn't do it for financial gain. You shouldn't do it for a work-life balance. You shouldn't do it so you can go on holiday whenever you want. You should do it so that you can be the master of your own success, because you will be the master of your own success. How you present yourself, how you perform will have a direct impact on how much money you can make and how successful your business is.
That's excellent. And that goes back to earnings are exponential, except if you do this by yourself, you can only ever earn a certain amount of time. So
a certain amount of time?
A certain amount of money. And this is when you might have to think about or want to take on staff. Yes. And then the employee becomes the employer. And this is where we go through a cycle. So one thing I will say is, you will have to graft like you never have before if you're just starting out, if you're just becoming self-employed. Eventually, things will get easier. Things will become more fluid. You will understand the business inside and out, and you might want to start to take on staff, but you have to have that established business. You have to do the graft, like we're doing with nail order.
Mm-hmm. And what you have to remember is that nobody asked you to do this. We've talked about this before. Nobody said, Jean, we always use Jean, please become a self-employed nail technician. Please do it. Nobody asked you to do it. You decided to do that. And as a result, nobody owes you anything. So again, we talked about sort of how you can busy up your diary and the things that you can do. But the one thing that you should never do is feel sorry for yourself. Every single person who has a successful business has gone through really hard times and has had to make sacrifices, both financially and in terms of time. We've sacrificed things. I can remember sacrificing, especially on the way up to Lottie's wedding, things like that, my sister's wedding, things that I could have been more involved in as a bridesmaid, but I couldn't because of our business. Definitely a lot of things that we could have attended, gone to, family things.
Been so many times we've had to duck out on family things.
Yeah.
Holidays and stuff like that.
That is a sacrifice that you have to make, because again, if you're flaky on people aren't going to hang around with you. Yeah. I kind of forgotten where I was going with that.
By the way, let me just move on to something. I've got down here your rules as for self-employed, but I'm going to counteract that ever so slightly because I've written it down. Not your goddamn rules. It's the customer's rules.
No, it's not.
It's everyone else's rules. You just adhere to them.
I disagree. And this is one thing that when nail technicians can really, really go wrong sometimes. We see things pop up on our group all the time. I've had a customer message me. They want this. I don't think it's right for them, or they've got something on their nails going on with their nails that I don't agree with, but they really, really want it. What should I do? You should do what your training has taught you to do. You must implement your rules and stick by them. We talked about this again recently. Like, you don't need to be a dictator. It was when we were talking about policies and stuff. Yeah. But you can dictate your own rules. If you don't want children in your space, you don't need to have children in your space. If you want your dog in your space, you can have your dog in your space. If you want to implement a late charge, a cancellation charge, if you want to say, I don't want to do French nails, I don't want to do square nails, whatever it is that you want to do, you can absolutely do. You are, like I said, the master of your own success, and your rules in your business should apply. If somebody doesn't like those rules, they don't need to come to your business. But no matter what you do, you are not going to be for everybody. So don't try to be. Do what feels natural to you and is right to you, because you are going to do best with that.
Yeah, listen to your internal compass.
Absolutely. When you work for somebody else, you have no control over that. But on the other flip side of the coin, what you have is when something goes wrong,
hands off.
I don't need to do all that. That's someone else's problem.
How many times have we said to blame somebody else, and there's no better person to blame than your boss?
Absolutely.
But I can't let you go without paying because my boss said.
Yeah, you can blame someone else. We actually encourage our staff to do this
all the time.
Blame us. Blame someone else. Yep. Fine. Yes, much, much easier to do when you are employed. When you are self-employed, you will have to deal with those really uncomfortable conversations yourself. But like we talked about previously when we were talking about policies, you can blame someone else, because for a lot of things, when it comes to policy specifically, in terms of, say, like children or whatever it is, you can blame I don't feel comfortable working on your nails because of my insurance. My insurance won't cover me. Always use them. When it comes to other things like late fees and things like that, there's no one else you can really blame, but you can just say, look, it's my policy. If I let it go for you, I'd have to let it go for everybody else. I have to stick by it. I have to stick by it because I've been burned so many times before.
I can you can even just blame like a husband or partner. Like, they are the ones who do the money.
Yeah, yeah, you could do that.
They check the books every week because I'm not very good at it. And if I let you go away with that, they'll shout at me. Yeah. When I was selling the camper van, this a week ago now, when I was selling the camper van, I was like, oh, my wife's really upset because we're getting rid of the camper van. You weren't upset. You wanted to bloody rid of it. So blame somebody else. The your rules one, I'll take a hit in that. I'll take an L in that because you are right. But the your rules one that I think is more important is you have control over your products, the type of clientele you want to take, the type of hours you want to work, the type of policies you want to have in place. You're more in the driver's seat of that type of thing.
Yep.
And one thing I would say is, as a nail tech, if say something goes wrong with your products, you can quickly switch to another brand, but you probably can't do that quite as quickly. Quick.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, if you work with somebody else, my belief as an employer is that your employees should have a say. It might not mean that you're just doing what they want, but you should hear them out and maybe try other things. We did that when we had the salon. Ultimately, the say is not yours. So you might have to work with products that you really, really hate. And I've heard that time and time and time again. Maybe the products are cheaper, and the salon owner is not a nail technician and doesn't know anything about it. So doesn't know the difficulties that you're facing. When you're employed, you can work with whatever you want.
One thing I always notice about hair salons, and I don't know if this is still true these days, but they always have their brands up that they do, Hairwell, or not this one, or Wella.
No, not Hairwell. Get
Wella, or Vidal Sassoon, or something like that. And these are the brands that we exclusively use. However, I've heard from like hairstylists, and they're like, but they don't actually use that in the back. They use the cheap ones.
Could be.
That's just something to think. I can't believe this podcast has gone on quite as long, honey. The last one that I want to talk about is side hustles, and I think this is the one where it's the most exciting one, if I'm honest with you. I think side hustles give you the benefits of a bit of everything.
Yeah.
The amount of nail techs I speak to who are nail techs and that's a side hustle. They're employed.
Well, just look at, as we said, how many people work for us who are nail technicians as well.
Yeah. So we have people who work in the warehouse. They pack orders, they stack shelves, but they are nail techs, and they do that maybe at the start of the week, and they become a nail tech at the end of the week. And they get their 2 days off at the weekend. It's a great work-life balance. I think that really is a work-life balance, because they're guaranteed a wage. They have their set customers in a condensed working week. Some of them work, don't get me wrong, 14 hours a day, big hours, but they have condensed it to a Thursday, a Friday and a half day Saturday, something like that. The customers who come into our store, when I'm doing TikTok, you guys hear the doorbell ring all the time. Customers come in and they have their work outfit on. IKEA, for example. Debbie was in the other day. She had her IKEA outfit on, and that's her main job. She's got a really good job in IKEA, but she does nails on the side for a side hustle, for a side income, but for a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and that's
so
the best
people.
part of it. A lot of people have a lot of fun with a side hustle because it's less serious. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's no real negative, but I reckon that a side hustle only remains a side hustle for so long, and then eventually you're going to go fully into one or the other. Do you know what I mean?
No. I think a lot of people, right, I will say, again, International Women's Day, a lot of people live with semi-controlling husbands, partners. And
Really?
they want them. It's kind of like the way the world is. I hate to say this. A lot of men say, that's just a silly little girl's thing. Doing nails is a silly little girl's thing. And a lot of men might say to their partners, that's a silly little girl's thing. But you can do it on the side, as long as you have this full-time job. I'm not saying that's true for every single person. But I'm sure there's one or two people listening to this podcast thinking, actually, I'd love to go full-time being a nail tech, but my partner probably won't let me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
I guess, it just depends on your circumstances. Like if you have kids and stuff like that and you're running a house together, it does kind of have to be a bit of a joint decision, doesn't it?
It does. And I'm saying partner, it could be the fact that you have kids and you want that stable income, like we talked about. You're employed by a different company or maybe employed by a salon and you still do nails on the side.
I think a side hustle is a really good way of, if you were in that situation where you're trying to persuade your partner, you run a house together, you have children together, so your decisions have to be jointly made. And your partner saying that it's a level of risk I'm not sure that that we should be taking. I think doing it as a side hustle is a really good way as like a proof of concept.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
You know what I mean? So you're saying like, look what I can actually do. And then once you've shown them that, they'll be like, oh my God, yeah, absolutely. If that's what you want to do, if you do want to turn your side hustle into your full-time thing.
I wish Rebecca turned her side hustle into a full-time thing because I wish she would go back to eyebrows so we could just see that money come in. Right now you're poor as folk because you've given up. But we came to that.
Yeah, but I'm happier.
Stuff your happiness. We came to that agreement mutually.
Did we?
It was very one-sided.
It was very one-sided that you wanted me to carry on and I said, no, I'm done.
You were pushing me towards like, I'm done. And I
was pushing you towards I'm done for like the last 3 years.
And we decided to set a date and we stuck to that date.
And I stuck to, and I'll tell you right now, it was really, really hard for me those last few months. Because
we were talking about this on the way in. Sorry to cut you off. On you go.
It's usually me cutting you off.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to do it. I hated being there. Hated doing it. It was so difficult when I'm juggling nail order, which was essential. It's funny how like things become. So nail order was the side hustle to the brows, really. And then the brows became the side hustle to nail order. Because of course we had the salon when we started nail order. So nail order was a side hustle.
Oh yeah.
Until it wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
And nail order was one thing that I really, really, really enjoyed. When they say, do what you enjoy and you won't work a day in your life, that is so true. And yes, we work every single day. And I say complain about it. I feel like I don't really complain. I really enjoy it.
You complain about certain aspects of it, but not actually.
Not actually working. No,
we're in here on a Saturday morning recording this podcast. We're doing it completely for free. So if you do enjoy it, you can maybe like and subscribe. I don't know, maybe little plug there. Or maybe just like take a screenshot and share it to your stories.
Yeah, we would love it if people did that. That would be really excellent.
Yeah. But one thing that you and I were discussing on the way in here, and the reason we've gone on to this podcast is realistically, over the last couple of years, we've not taken any money from Nail Order, not really in the context that we should have been. We've not been employed by Nail Order. We would have been better off being employed somewhere else.
Literally had this discussion on the way in that, for us as a couple, Chris particularly would have been better because I had brows, so I had a second thing. But it was a sacrifice that we had to make to get Nail Order to where it is now. So I had to continue to do brows as a sacrifice for us so that we could put the work into Nail Order and then eventually, actually be on the payroll.
Yeah. So going back to the side hustle thing, I know we've kind of jumped off topic there. I think side hustles are great for a lot of things. For instance, in a picture, you work 5 days and you do your side hustle one evening and a half day on a Saturday.
Wow, so you have 1.5 days off now.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
But it's a lot of days off, yeah, you're right. But you are saving for a holiday. So this is great for it. You are saving for a deposit in a house. Great for it.
I think even more these days where people are doing, if people who work full time, a lot of them do work a condensed working week, right? So 4 days, that does allow more availability for a side hustle. But I think actually more than the money, some people just do it for enjoyment.
Yeah, that's right. It's artistic expression, especially with nails.
Mm-hmm.
It might be different if you were, I don't know, I was going to say a carpenter, but a carpenter can have the best time, like building a fence or something, you know? I can't think of a profession where you wouldn't enjoy the side hustle aspect of it. You know what? Actually, a side hustle, arguably, is fun.
Yeah.
The rest of this, God, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing? This is our side hustle right now.
I know. This it literally is. It's about what type of person you are. And this is the thing. Like, being self-employed isn't going to suit everyone. Being employed isn't going to suit everyone. If you are a risk-averse person, I would highly recommend against being self-employed. If you're not, if you are...
Risk on, like us.
Yeah, then, yeah, it'll probably work really, really well for you and you'll get your dopamine hits, from it. Whereas if you were risk-averse, you're going to be, like, climbing the walls with anxiety. And don't get me wrong, like, there's a lot of anxiety involved for us, even though we love doing it. But, again, it's a bit of a trade-off, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing better than launching a product and watch it just soar, Arguably, there's nothing worse than doing a TikTok.
Arguably, we've said the word arguably today probably 10 times.
I can argue.
It's the day of the day.
One thing I would say about a side hustle compared to self-employed.
Well, it is self-employed.
Yeah, it is. Well, actually, I'm going to talk about something in a second, right? Let me come back to that. Hold that thought. If, going back to January, you have a little bit of a quieter time and it's your side hustle, it's going to feel less quiet because overall you have less clients. And even if it is completely dead and you have one client that week, you still have your job. So you do feel a bit more safe. That's your security blanket, I would say that's the advantage of a side hustle. I'm really pushing this side hustle.
But the disadvantage is that you have all of the disadvantages of both combined. So you have all the disadvantages of being employed, which is that you have to march to the beat of someone else's drum, right? And that your earnings are capped. And you have to go in when they say, right? As an example. But also, when you are self-employed, so you have all of the negatives that come with that. You got to do your own taxes.
Well, yes, I suppose that is. But I think you would worry less. I've had to edit this 500 times, guys, so you can take from that whatever you will. I would say, arguably, side hustle is a great way, like you said, to dip your toe into, or just have the enjoyment.
To prove a concept. I think if you are risk averse but you have an interest, having a side hustle is probably the best thing because you can work the two alongside each other, see if something actually works for you.
I'm just thinking, Lucy Pastorelli, great friend of ours. Mm-hmm. She had an amazing salon. Mm-hmm. She did a lot of training. Still does she?
Still does.
Right, okay. I don't know. We don't talk about that anymore. But what we talk about is her side hustle, which became LP Tools, and that's the moon. Kind of like mail order. Mm-hmm. This was our side hustle. We had some time off during the pandemic.
Yep.
To the moon.
Yep.
It's a good proof of concept.
It is, isn't it?
It is. We employ how many people now? 21? Flipping amazing. So,
we're amazing.
No, I'm just saying, it is amazing. It is amazing. God, we're amazing.
It is amazing. Never in a zillion years would I have thought that nail order would become what it has. Never, ever, ever.
So take from this podcast what you will. However, what I will say is, if you right now are self-employed and you're hating your life, maybe just go get a job.
Yeah.
Even if it's only a couple of days a week.
Yeah.
If you're employed and you hate your employer, well,
find another job.
If you're employed, you hate your employer, you hate your job, you hate the people you're working with, because one of them stinks or something like that. Maybe think about starting a side hustle, and that side hustle might grow to being self-employed.
Yeah.
If you're working in a job that is not nail related, but you do have a passion for it because you've been doing it since you were 7 years old, then maybe side hustles are the way to dip your toe into something that could be become a blossoming career.
Yeah.
And the good thing I would say about having a bit of both or being part of all of the kind of the above is you can ebb and flow.
I think
When
the
you
side
get
hustle is a good way of doing it, isn't it?
yeah, it absolutely is.
Like I said, for the proof of concept, because now I'm just thinking about it here, right? If you imagine you work for a bank, right? And then you decide, I'm not going to work for a bank anymore. Tomorrow I'm starting my nail business.
Yeah.
You are starting from the bottom, from zero, not a single client to your name. You've got to get your name out there and you've got to get customers in. I think back to like when we did that when we first opened the salon, like how did we do that? But anyway,
research. We did a lot of research and we did it together. That's one of the big things.
So you're starting from nothing, right? If you have a side hustle, that's if you have that as a side hustle, it's much less scary.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say to you is that if you work for a salon and you are busy in the salon, lots of clients coming in, those clients don't belong to you. Actually, those clients belong to no one. They don't belong to the salon, but they certainly don't belong to you. Just because that they are asking to book in with you every 3 weeks doesn't mean that they're going to continue to book in with you if you leave.
It's just they like you less. So they like you more than other people.
Yeah, but it's really important to understand that it is not only the person doing their nails that they like, it is the environment. And when you move from a salon environment to maybe working from a room in your home or maybe renting a space somewhere else, that's created a very, very different environment. And that is something that we watched happen when we had our own salon because, of course, needless to say, we had a few people leave and go self-employed. And what would happen is that initially, yes, we would get some clients that went with them. And we would get clients who would ask for them every single week, and then they would message to book in. We would say, "I'm sorry, they've left." They'll say, "Okay, give me someone else." But also, what we saw happen is that some of those clients who initially left with them came back after the first treatment, not because they didn't like the nails that we done, they just didn't like the vibe of everything else that was happening. Because it is an experience. For some people, yes, it's just going in and getting your nails done and off. You don't care about anything else that's going on. But for people who get their nails done regularly, part of that is the experience. Yeah. So do not be blindsided and think that because you've built up a good clientele within the salon that you work in, a clientele doesn't belong to you. Clientele is far more weighted towards the salon.
And we've seen more often than not what we discussed right at the very start about being consistent and stuff like that. Clients moving on with the nail tech and they've maybe go there for 3-4 months. And then that nail tech becomes not quite as consistent. They stop wanting to work Saturdays. They stop wanting to do Fridays. They become pregnant. All of a sudden, that client drifts back.
Yeah, so there's that level of inconsistency, or there's a bit of risk for the client involved with just going to a self-employed nail technician, whereas they've been used to going to a salon that has maybe 6 nail technicians. They know that their appointment is always going to be fine.
Yeah.
That they're always going to be able to get an appointment in there.
It's like tattoos. I was thinking about this. I had a sleeve and a half of tattoos, and then my tattoo artist decided to go back to Romania. So then I'd like half that. You've got to find the right person to get it to all tie in together. And I was, 5 or 6 years? I wasn't really looking for most of it, but all of a sudden I seen this guy and I was like, yep, perfect. He just matches in with it. So I think that's the big thing. You've got to get the right person for you.
Yeah.
Moving on to that nail tech's other salon might not be the right salon for you. It might be in the back of a hair studio or something, and you've got blow dryers and stuff like that, and it doesn't feel like you can speak to each other and stuff like that,
Yeah.
So,
no, that's a very good point. That's actually something that we did see. That was a very particular situation that we saw. They didn't like the sort of the hair environment, and they had like a desk and stuff. I mean, as an individual myself, if I try and put myself into a client's shoes, I would prefer to go to a salon.
Yeah.
It's just that's because completely personal. I like things to be very impersonal when I receive treatments. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring it back to
You're like that as well. You wouldn't go to someone's house.
No, absolutely not.
Would I go to a space where there was lots of people working? Yes, I would. But I would feel like I was putting all my eggs in one basket going to one person because I know what people are like.
Yep. I've done that recently. I've changed barber probably about a year ago because the guy who I was going to was a really nice guy. But every time I would go in, he would ask me business advice about marketing on Facebook and stuff like that because he knew the business we were in, and I'd have to sit and give him a whole lesson on Facebook ads. And I felt like I just want to just sit here for just
sit in silence. That would
20
be
minutes, and and sometimes it's best just to maybe move on.
Yeah, it's a lot when you're a busy person and you're working all the time. That when you're then in your private life,
yeah,
even if it's just going to get your hair cut or your nails done, having to like sit and pretend and talk and like use more of your social battery.
Well, I see I've not had a haircut done in ages.
I was thinking about that this morning, actually.
A lot of time.
I assume you're going to go next week.
Oh, yeah. You're going to wash your hair next week?
My hair 2 days ago. Crazy times. Midweek.
You know what? Actually, I've barely been able to do this podcast looking at your eyebrows. So on point this week.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
People always say that when they need done.
Oh, really?
I've not waxed them in like 2 months.
Wow.
I just tweezed them.
So if that's enough to make you think to yourself, I've been listening to this podcast on audio format and I really want to see what Rebecca's eyebrows look like, then head over to the Nail on Sunday YouTube channel where you can like and subscribe. I feel that that's been a good one this week. I feel that's right, okay, I'm going to just play devil's advocate. Where, if you were to go back to being a nail tech, where would you see yourself these days?
I would be self-employed. I know what I've just said is totally contradictory, but I would be self-employed. I don't work well for other people because I think they're not right. But at least I have the self-awareness to acknowledge such a thing.
Excellent. I enjoy being employed for other people.
You do?
You didn't let me finish, honey.
It's because I'm so shocked by your statement.
And showing them how their business should be run.
Yes.
In the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
I just want to point something out. When I used to sell beds, the biggest store in our company was Candle Rigs in Glasgow. It was a massive 3-story floor, huge store, and they were doing around about £1.5 million a year. I can say that now because that company's gone. Our tiny store in Dundee, tiny little concession in the back of Harvey's, was, I don't know, 10th of the size, and on a record year we did 1.25 million.
Snaps for Chris.
And that I had a small team, and at that point in time we were just going for pure quality. Every single customer would come in, they get the best bed, the best level service, the best aftercare and everything else. And that, I think, set me up for what we have now. And I think everything that we've done in our past lives has set us up for trying to get nail done in the way it has.
I totally agree. And that's why I don't ever believe in regret or anything like that. Yeah. Everybody's done things in their past, things that they're probably not proud of. But I don't think you should regret them because it makes you the person you are today. And without those experiences, you can't be here.
Yeah.
So I just don't believe in regret at all for that reason.
And that's the thing. When I was in that job, I really, really enjoyed it. I moved on to what I thought was a better job. Turned out it wasn't so much. I had more fun at Phones For You. But I always think back to myself how proud I was at that job. And if you're in a job just now where you're super comfortable, you're super happy, that's great. But maybe in 10 years you won't be. And sometimes it's good to look back and think of how proud you were, but also where you're at right now. I'm proud of you. International Women's Day. Keep giving you big ups.
I'm proud of you.
What for?
Sticking around.
Sticking around with you, yeah. Bloody hell. Also, if you work with your partner, like I'm married to this beautiful princess, but at the same time, we literally work together 5 to 6 days a week.
We're together. We are together all of the time.
And then she won't leave me alone on a Sunday because she knows I go to Aldi and I meet up with that girl.
You go, Chris, I'm sorry. You invited me to Aldi last week. You said, do you want to come with me?
Do you know why? Because I knew she was
on holiday. What? I don't even want to go to Aldi. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because the stuff there is shite.
Take that back.
They don't have a bakery.
Nobody needs bakery.
Pointless. And they're shite. I'm just not here for it. I don't like it. You spend money on things that we don't need. And I'm just not here for it. I prefer my regular supermarkets.
But the yogurts, the protein, all the
protein stuff. I really enjoy the protein yogurts, so I'm happy for you to pick them up for me. I enjoy them. They're excellent, especially the ones with the balls. But other than that, I need a bakery in my life. And I'm just like, meh. It just doesn't impress me.
Well, on that note.
Don't impress me much.
On that note, Monica will meet you in the middle on Sunday. Honey, do you want to get us out of here before I get slapped?
As always, guys, if you enjoyed that, please give us a thumbs up. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to be notified when we release.
Soon to Nail on Sunday, all the tea getting spilled. Nail text, talking game, keeping it real, y'all gon' feel. From the signs to the drama, every secret they reveal. Stay sharp, stay tuned, man, you know it's the deal.